The Islamists are taking over. The Muslims are taking over. That's what it was giving. That's what it was giving. You are looking me in my eye and telling me that Concert Bay could have gotten a PLT deal off of Shaken Yash in front of Omah Lay. Let's get real. Allegations against Diddy dropped. People are asking whether Ross is Kate Middleton. You know what I mean? They're saying ZZ Mills is going into the Big Brother house. Welcome back. Gave you a little bit of vocals there. Welcome back to It's That Deep, the podcast. This is a podcast, say it with me, where everything is literally that deep. My name is CoE. I'm your host, and we are back for another episode. If you don't know what this podcast is, the gist is I talk to you guys. Hopefully you talk back to me. We're still working on that. But we talk about some of the biggest news stories, some of the biggest events, some of the biggest happenings taking place in the culture. Yeah, vomit. But in the culture, in current affairs, in politics, in pop culture. And we try to make sense of them because a lot happens in any given week. And it's great to know what's going on, but it's even better to investigate what those things mean for who we are as people. And so this week has been, I hope it's been good for you guys. We are officially in March. I feel like just the other day I was saying welcome to February, the month of love, and now we're in March. I don't know where the year is running off to, but it's been a bit of a long week for me, but this is my favorite part of the week, recording these episodes. So my mood has picked up a little bit. There's a lot that's been happening, you know, from new allegations against Diddy dropped. People are asking whether Ross is Kate Middleton. You know what I mean? They're saying ZZ Mills is going into the Big Brother house. Like, a lot has happened. Even this morning as I speak, they're going toe to toe with each other on Twitter about Alanuco and wedding dresses and all the rest of it. So a lot is happening. And a lot has happened, shall I say. So it's been an interesting week, and we're going to get into some of those stories. So sit tight. I would recommend you get a cup of tea. My choice, Earl Grey with oat milk. Apparently oat milk is not good for you. Someone said that to me the other day. That's a bit tight. But anyway, get a choice of a drink of your choice. Slap this on YouTube or Spotify, I don't mind. Or take a walk or go to the gym. I don't really care. But get tight, get ready. And yeah, let's get into this week's episode. So my first honourable pick for this week, we are back to 2 honourable picks because I ain't finna mess up the format too much. But my first honourable pick for this week, and it's all for my Christians. So if you are a believer, lock in here. If you're not, it's still cool. Come in. But I came across an article this week in the Spectator. Fun fact, I used to work at the Spectator many moons ago. I interned as a trainee journalist. I don't know, but I interned at the Spectator. And if you know anything about them and where they stand on the political spectrum, you'll know why this particular pick is going to be really interesting, because I came across an article, and the article was basically about the synod of the Church of England. So the Church of England have their synod is their leadership team, or legislative body, and they meet very frequently, obviously, to discuss matters happening, I guess, in England and within the church. And they had a meeting most recently, and the topic of that meeting was racial injustice. And so I came across this. I'm not Church of England, so I had no knowledge of that, but I came across this article, and the journalist, and again, like I said, if you know anything about the Spectator and where they sit politically and where they stand on what they consider to be wokeness, you would be probably not surprised that this article was going in, for lack of better phrase, on the Church of England. And, you know, this guy was writing this piece, and he was like, well, why is the church talking about racial justice, and why are we all of a sudden so woke? You know, their buildings are breaking down. You know, this is the latest census revealed that nobody is labeling themselves as a believer anymore. Surely we have bigger concerns. And I just thought to myself, how interesting that I don't even know if the journalist is a believer or not. He came across as he was quoting scripture in absolutely the most incorrect context. I cannot even believe what I read. But, how interesting that this is the perception of the church in terms of our role in society and what role we play. So I'm going to read what he said verbatim because I don't want to misrepresent it. So he said, when it comes to lectures on political theory or of issues of inequality, there are plenty of capable organizations already out there. Why would the church think that people will sit in chilly pews to hear it done less well by those whose proper business lies elsewhere is a mystery? And I thought to myself, that is so interesting, because it gives, and like I said, I don't know what this guy's faith is, if he has any, but it really gives a window into like what people perceive the church to be and the role that the church should play in terms of society. And it really is like representing this idea of like what they call it, the church and state, like the separation of church and state. The church is over there, the state is over there. They do not involve themselves with one another. And I'm not gonna lie and say it didn't grieve me, because like he's like, why would, essentially the whole gist of his article is like, why would people go to the church when there's other organizations out there doing it better, tackling inequality, tackling racial injustice way better than the church? Why would they do that, particularly when it's not the church's business? Now, that's obviously a point I disagree with. If you are a believer, if you know me personally, I believe it is our mandate and it's our responsibility to tackle issues like racial injustice and racial inequality. But I can't even hate on him. Do you know what I mean? I can't even hate on him, because he makes a very valid point in that there are other organizations out there who have tackled these issues far better. I mean, there was a conversation a few months ago about how we even address like genocide and everything that's going on in Israel and Palestine, which I feel like I speak about every single week. But there was a conversation about the fact that, and I was having this conversation even with my sisters the other day, like for the most part, a lot of churches have not spoken about it. And so I can't even hate on him when he says that there are other organizations doing it better, because they are. But I think, upon thinking about what this podcast is about and, what it's revealing to us, I think most of all, it just grieves me. It grieves me that people are buying more and more into this idea of the separation of church and state, particularly because, that was one of the first instructions in scripture given to man, was to, let's get it up, because, we might as well have a bit of church. In Genesis, one of the first instructions given to man was to have dominion and to subdue the earth. That word dominion being rule. So it speaks of rulership. And so it does grieve me that, when I read articles like this, again, I can't even really hate on it, because I'm sure it represents the thinking of a lot of society. People are not approaching the church anymore for social issues, because according to this article, it's like the church aren't even doing that effectively anyway. So why not just go to the millions of other charities and organizations that are doing it and doing it well? And, I've been thinking about it all week, and the fact that, or like the question, like, how do we, essentially get back to the place where we dominate culture and we drive and we basically set the agenda for culture, for politics, for business, for all of these things. Like, how on earth do we do that? And that's why I'm so adamant, even as a believer, in doing stuff like this, because Jesus can still be, we're about to go to church, but Jesus can still be seen even when you're talking about politics. He can still be seen when you're talking about business and talking about the FTSE 100 and whatever it is. Like, there is an ability for kingdom to be done or seen in whatever sphere of life, not just within the church. And it just really has me thinking this week about like, that's like how do we not even claw it back, because that sounds like, that's like, don't beg, that's disgusting. But like, how do we establish ourselves as a viable and a legitimate voice in terms of shifting and shaping culture, because it doesn't feel like that right now. So yeah, that's why I said this is for my Christians and my believers, because we get bogged down so much in like our personal issues and our day-to-day living, and all of that is important and all of that is great, and God does care about that. But there's a bigger assignment at hand. I feel like, if you know me personally, you know that this is how I talk and this is like the things that run through my mind. But I was like, this is a real convergence of things. When I saw it in the Spectator, I was like, oh damn, we know within ourselves that like we need to do more in terms of influence and actually seeing kingdom, but now the world is catching on and clocking on, and it's like, okay, wow, we really got to get to work now. So I thought that was interesting. Different one. Very, I don't think, have I spoken about religion on this podcast thus far? No, because this is not a Christian podcast, sorry. But yeah, a really interesting one, and definitely one to chew on and to ponder on and to meditate on, in terms of what the heck, I was gonna say hell, I can't do that, talking about Jesus. But what the heck can we do, you know, in terms of influence? So yeah, that's my first honourable pick. Let's move on to honourable pick number 2. Okay, so honourable pick number 2. And at this junction, I'm going to allow you to go ahead and skip to the main story if you don't want to listen if you don't want to listen to me ramble on about Omah Lay, because I am going to do it. And I wholeheartedly apologize, but not really, because it's my podcast. But if you don't want to hear any more on the Omah Lay topic, this is your moment. Please do skip to the main story, or no, there's no or, skip to the main story. But yeah, I said I wasn't going to do it. I said I was not going to go and join bad gang of all these people talking all this nonsense day and night. They should be in their prayer closet. They're talking about Omah Lay. But this podcast is called It's That Deep. And I feel like the things that I have been seeing, the conversation, Twitter, they like to call it discourse. You're not fooling anybody. We know you're all chatty patties. But the conversation I have been seeing, I'm like, it's that deep. It's that deep. What I have been witnessing has been indicative of where we are moving to as a society, particularly as ninjas, as black people. So I feel like if you don't know what happened with Omah Lay, I'm not going to explain it, because you can just type it up. But okay, no, I'll explain it very briefly. So girl and boy go to concert. Girl gets dragged up onto stage to dance with the artist very inappropriately. She does exactly that. Boy is left in the audience watching in disbelief, tears in his eyes, shaking, throwing up, vomiting, and he gets turned into like a meme. Internet is roaring about it for days. I thought we're all gonna have a good laugh about it and then pack it up, but some people don't know how to pack things up. Do you know what I mean? It's a real shame. So conversation was revived because it touched overseas. You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking about, you know, that chart that we do at the end of every year to be like, oh, this happened in January, this happened in February, March, and so on and so forth. I feel like February is going to be February 2024 is going to be defined by Omah Lay and that girl on TikTok who was telling us like who she married, or like who the heck did I marry, or something. 50 parts of, I didn't listen to any of it, but yeah, so it touched overseas. And then like one of the massive streamers in America, Kaisa Nat, basically tried to get either one of them on his platform. He didn't succeed with the girl because she was like, no, I need some money if you're gonna basically clown me in front of millions, which I hear it, get your bag, sis. But he was like, yeah, let's do it. He got 20k, which in the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot, you know what I mean? But now he, you know, according to some people, has taken the W because he's doing sponsorships and sponsored ads and videos. And I just sat down and I just thought to myself, this is exactly what's wrong with content in this country. And this is exactly what's wrong with black content. And I feel like I've spoken about this in different capacities, both here and on my TikTok, but I cannot fathom, like, if you want to know how dumb people are, go on Twitter, go on the Bird app or X or whatever you want to call it. There are some really dumb people on that app, because they were coming to tell us that, oh my God, the girl fumbled the bag. Right now she could be sitting in PLT headquarters, getting a deal, getting a fashion label sorted out. She could be on Strictly Come Dancing in the next 2 years. And I said, everybody needs to shut their mouth and hold their lips, because what on God's holy and divine earth are we talking about? What are we talking about? You are looking me in my eye and telling me that because they're calling her Concert Bay now, that Concert Bay could have gotten a PLT deal off of Shaking Yash in front of Omah Lay. Let's get real. And I think there's so many layers to this. There's like, one thing is like the parasocial relationships, which is like, we think that these celebrities know us and care about us. I could promise you now, Omah Lay does not know what that girl was wearing. You could not pay him any amount of money to tell you what color the wig was on her head. He doesn't care about her. But there's something about social media that makes us feel so entitled to people and so attached to people in a way that we're really not. That is really damaging like social relationships. That's number one. Number two, and my biggest issue with the state of content right now, is like the desire to like stretch viral moments further than they need to go. And I think virality is really frying our brains like a slice of egg. And it's really proving to be like a real opposition to genuine, well thought out, well produced content. And I'm saying this as a content creator and somebody who, I think I've been viral. I'm going to say I've been viral. You know what I mean? A couple videos one video on 6 mil, which I don't even care about. Can I be honest? I don't care about. But like, I think we are seeing such a desire to make virality more than what it is. And I feel like the essence of virality is that it's hot for the moment, and that's it. But when we take viral moments and this has been happening, in the past few years, but like we take viral moments and then we turn it into merch, and then we turn it into songs, and then we turn it into like a 50-part story time. It's like, shut up, shut your mouth. The essence of virality is that it was for that time and it stopped after that time, and we can all sit back and reflect and be like, oh my God, do you remember that? How fun, kiki kaka. But when you drag it out, it loses its je ne sais quoi, and also it steals, to be quite honest with you, opportunities, from genuine hard working people who have committed their life to making content, not for the sake of virality, but for the sake of quality. And so I even think now about like that stupid uncle on TikTok, Eddie Abu, who is not a nutritionist, but is telling everybody to wake the F up and telling them to eat 6 eggs for breakfast. Incredibly viral, incredibly hot at the moment. But GRM Daily have like commissioned a show, and the show is crap. Like, the show is a bag of poo. But because it's a viral moment, people think virality equals quality, and because in their minds virality equals quality, they're commissioning that rubbish, as opposed to like, oh, here's a really well thought out show, still black, still touches on that issue, still entertaining, but there's evidence to show that obviously audiences love the Concert Bays and the Omah Lays of life and the Eddie Abus of life, and not the other like plethora of content that's out there. And so they're just going to continue commissioning nonsense. And so this was more like a rant and a ramble, which I tend to do when it comes to this topic. But I'm just like, oh, our generation's a bit fried, man. I can't lie. We're a bit fried. And I think that's why everyone's seeking the biggest and the next viral moment, because they know if they capitalize off it, they can eat good. But really, they can only eat good for maybe like a year, because even a year, CoE, you're being hella generous. Give it 3 months. Nobody's remembering Omah Lay and Concert Bay in 3 months. I guarantee you that. And so that's why this podcast is called It's That Deep. Because I literally cannot fathom the nonsense my eyes was beholding. What do you mean? PLT? Let's get so real. Let's get so real right now. Don't actually piss me off. Do not make me angry. PLT. She danced with Omah Lay. I can dance right. Should I stop the video and dance right now? Are they gonna give me PLT deal? Don't get me angry. PLT, guys. I'm telling you, do not chase virality. To my content creators, do not chase virality. Chase quality content. And again, this is another assertion about our generation. Chasing quality content long term is way more redeemable and way more sustainable than 5 minutes of fame. But we're in a bit of a microwave generation now. So anyway, I'm waffling now, but Omah Lay, now let this be the end of it. I don't want to hear about it again. Now let this be I've case closed. Uti Paris, stop it. I don't want to hear anything else. But yeah, that was my second honorable pick. Just some of my thoughts word vomited out. So yeah, let's do our main story. Okay, so for my main story, I'm gonna get serious again and like put my political hat back on, because this is a bit of a deep, it's a bit of a deep topic. So I mean, just personally, I'm trying to consume less and less nonsense. You know what I mean? There's a lot of crap out there, like I just said. And I'm trying to get back into my documentary bag. I'm trying to just watch more and learn more about the world. Because back in my heyday, do you know what I mean? Back when I was a spring chicken, I used to watch a lot of documentaries. And so I was like, let me watch some documentaries this week. And I was like, oh, okay, there's a lot going on with Shamima Begum at the moment. Let's watch or rewatch the Shamima Begum story. And this was like around the time when she started doing a lot of press, basically in a desire to come back to the UK. So I was, watching the story, and then obviously the news broke that the Court of Appeals have upheld the government's decision to revoke her citizenship. And so, context for anybody who doesn't know, Shamima Begum, I feel like everyone knows who she is, but obviously now she ran off to Syria when she was like 14, 15. And in 2019, the government, particularly the Home Secretary, who at the time was Sajid Javid, that in itself is incredibly significant because he is an Asian man, but they decided to revoke her citizenship, which is technically against international law because she didn't become stateless at that time, but that was a possibility. So they revoked her citizenship, and they argued that she isn't stateless just yet because she holds Bangladesh, or was it Bangladeshi? I'm not sure, please someone correct me, but she holds Bangladeshi citizenship. So they revoked her citizenship in 2019. She appealed it in that same year, and they rejected the appeal. And then in 2021, Bangladesh removed her citizenship also. So in 2021, she became stateless, which is against international law. You cannot have somebody be stateless. I'm still shocked by it. It's just ridiculous. And so now in 2024, the Court of Appeals have ruled that it was lawful for the government to have removed her citizenship. And their line of reasoning is the fact that, well, they basically said it was lawful for Sajid Javid to not have considered her age or the fact that she may have been a victim of sex trafficking, child trafficking, grooming, all of the above. It was lawful in their mind for Sajid Javid to ignore all of that and to still go ahead with the removal of her citizenship. And that, I hate the phrase black and brown, I really do, but like, to me it's so indicative of particularly how this country treats black and brown girls in particular, which is like this adultification and treating them as older than they are. Almost like punishing them for something that is well outside of their control. So like Shamima Begum, she's not a victim here, but she most definitely is not a villain. And it's almost like in the press and by the government, she's been vilified for a decision she made as a child. But she was held to a standard as if she was an adult at the time she made the decision. And that's not what happened. So that's number one. Just park that in your mind. Keep that at the back of your mind. Number one. Number two, now there's been this whole conversation throughout the course of this week about Islamophobia in the Tory party. And Lee Anderson, we call him 30p Lee because he is, if you know, you know. But he was he's been suspended now, but he was a former Conservative MP, and I'm even laughing because it's just, anyway, he made comments about Sadiq Khan being run by Islamists and the fact that London is being taken over by terrorists and there are no-go zones in London because of Islamic terrorism. And you know what, I'm laughing because it's like, when you just get that like really drunk person, I don't know, like you're walking through like ends or something and you just get that drunk person and they're just slurring their words, just riffing off every conspiracy theory under this. The Islamists are taking over. The Muslims are taking over. That's what it was giving. That's what it was giving. And it's like, where did you get that from? Who told you can't go to Tower Hamlets? But anyway, so he made that comment. And then, of course, Sadiq Khan was like, excuse me, this is racist and this is Islamophobic. And the Tory party, particularly Rishi Sunak, was like, his comments were wrong, but they were just wrong. He didn't go as far as saying it's Islamophobic. And I mean, I think we've known that this country has a real issue with Islamophobia anyway, but I'm not sure. It most definitely doesn't get the same level of gravity that like anti-Semitism gets, which we're going to talk about in a second. But anyway, 30p Lee was suspended from the Tory party. He now is running as an independent, I believe, for Reform UK, aka the Brexit party, in the general election. And, you know, good luck to him, Godspeed and everything. But I just have been thinking about like, what on earth, or like, what was it that made Rishi Sunak go all the way to saying like that comment was wrong, but it wasn't Islamophobic? So I hear him say that, and then I go like, what is the measure, or like, what is the spectrum? What does the spectrum look like in terms of us labeling a comment from being wrong to being Islamophobic? And I say that because, you know, like, you can sneeze the wrong way in this country and be labeled an anti-Semite. Like, anything these days is labeled as anti-Semitism. But why are the Conservative Party, and I'm not even going to put this on the Conservative Party actually, I'm going to put this on the entire country, why are we so good at defining and identifying what is anti-Semitic but not what is Islamophobic? And I asked that question, but I feel like I know the answer, and it's because of race. Because Islam is a religion that is followed by black and brown people predominantly. Judaism is not. And so it's easier to point the finger at people who attack, for the most part, white passing people, but not a religion that's followed by black and brown people. Okay, so number 3, my last point is that Rishi Sunak announced this week that he is committing, brace yourself for this, 72 million Great British sterling pounds towards fighting what he says is utterly disgusting anti-Semitism. Now, I will absolutely back him on that. Anti-Semitism is disgusting. It has no place in our society. I don't know that it's worth committing 72 million pounds of public money towards. I really do not. And I think it's interesting that he can commit that money and make that statement. But actually, Sky News reported just 2 weeks ago that there's been a 335% increase in anti-Muslim hate crime since the 7th of October, the Hamas attack against Israel. There's been such a spike in anti-Muslim sentiment and hatred, but nobody's committing not $1 or penny or Great British pound towards fighting Islamophobia. And so my question is, why is one eye so able to see religious hate and one eye is shut towards religious hate towards Muslims? Again, race is at the core of this. I would challenge any of you to tell me any different. I would love to hear if you have a different hypothesis, but at the core of it is race. And this is what we mean when we say there's a hierarchy of race, and even I'm going to go as far as saying a hierarchy of religion in the UK, because there is, you know, I was reading even a story this week, and I'll link it down below so you guys know I'm not making this up, but there was a story of a young white girl who was groomed online by American right-wing extremists. She went over to America, found out how horrible it was, and she unalived herself. There is a reason why she is treated as what she was, rightfully so, a young, vulnerable teen who was groomed by extremists. There's a reason she's treated as that. And there's also a reason nobody even really knows her story. That's what I'm thinking about. But there's a reason why she was treated in that manner. And Shamima Begum was vilified and treated like a fully functioning and conscious adult when she did what she did at 15. There's a reason why there's a disparity in their treatment. And it goes back to what I was saying last week about credibility, because their two stories are incredibly identical. Both groomed online, both went abroad to fight a cause that they had no idea about. The only reason why we treat one as a victim and one as a villain is because of this issue or the reason why we give credibility to one story and not the others is because of the issue of race. That's the factor that determines the credibility each of them are given. And it's race that makes us incapable of sympathizing with the likes of a Shamima Begum. And that's also the reason why these actual fully functioning adults who are running off to Israel now to fight with the IDF are going to be welcomed back into the UK with open arms, because they, for the most part, are white passing, and majority of the people who follow that religion are white passing, and so nobody's up in arms about that. They are not running off to fight and join terrorism. They are supporting a cause, or whatever narrative, you know, the people want to spin about that, and that's the real tea. It's about race. It is about race. And that is also why Keir Starmer is kicking people out of his party left, right and centre. You look at him the wrong way and you're labelled an anti-Semite and you are kicked out of the party. But on the other hand, he completely fails to acknowledge the Ford report, published 2 years ago now, that tells us how rampant, you know, Islamophobia, misogyny, racism has been in the Labour Party since before Jeremy Corbyn and even after Jeremy Corbyn. He refuses to acknowledge that, but all his time and energy and effort has gone into catching anti-Semites and, you know, dealing with people who are actually rightfully so critiquing the government of Israel and not the religion of Judaism. There's even a conflation there, which is a whole nother conversation that I don't have time to get into. But there's a reason why he's given that gravity and kicking people out of his party for the sake of Israel. And he's a sleeping lion when it comes to racism, Islamophobia, misogyny. And so, you know, I don't even have the time to get into the nuances of like race and religion because it is quite confusing. You know, being a Jew is not a race. As I said before, you get Black Jews. Like, it's not. It just feels wicked. It feels wicked, and it feels. I mean, I saw an article the other day about, like, there was a Muslim MP who was like, they don't care about the Muslim vote. And so all of this again is just playing politics, I guess, and just being strategic in terms of like, well, what's going to get us the vote? Saying we're going to commit £72 million to fighting anti-Semitism is going to get us the vote. The black population, not so big, so we don't really care. Muslim population, always kind of vote Labour anyway. We don't really care. Do you know what I mean? It just feels like everything is so strategic and political and nobody actually cares. But I don't expect anything else from this government. So yeah, I tried, as I do with most of my main stories, to marry a few pieces of information, but looked at Shamima Begum's story, looked at Lee Anderson's Islamophobic comments, and looked at Rishi Sunak's pledge to commit £72 million to anti-Semitism. And I said, there's a disconnect here. There's something going on here that is like, they're literally playing in our faces. And it's just, I feel like every week I get on here and I'm just more and more apathetic. But it is what it is. So, yeah, that concludes our 12th episode, I believe. 12th episode, maybe. Yeah, thank you for listening. Let me know what you're thinking. I think I said at the start of this episode, it's a conversation. So I do want to know what you're thinking. Yeah, about all of it. I can't even remember what I've spoken about now, but all of it. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I want to know. I don't want to just shout out into the zeitgeist. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. As always, everything that I've like quoted or article that I've read or documentary that I've watched will be linked below or in the show notes. So check those out if you want to. And yeah, man, let's go again. We go again next week. New round, new stories. Stay smart. Don't be dumb like those people on Twitter. PLT, can you imagine? Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I am gonna love and leave you, and yeah, take care. Bye bye.